Well, good morning. Today we're continuing our Advent series, and we're going to be looking at the book of Hebrews and really the great hope we have of Jesus being the fulfillment of all the prophecies. But before we jump into that, I want to quickly remind you that next week we're going to be gathering in person at the El Segundo Beach where we've gathered previously. And we're going to gather and we're going to celebrate the coming of Jesus. Just a side note, if you're wondering how does that fit in with our current county regulations, as a religious organization, we're legally allowed to gather outside and follow some masks and social distance guidelines that they have in places for churches. And so we'll do that, and I'm excited that we get to really gather, and I hope to see many of you in person next week. And actually, I'm really looking forward to the day, hopefully soon, where we're going to be able to meet again in person each week and actually greet one another with hugs and handshakes and warm embraces and celebrate the relationships that we have because of Jesus. So if you have your Bibles, I want to encourage you to open to Hebrews chapter 1. And I want to jump into our Advent series. And if you remember last week, Brad talked about the incarnation and the truth that Jesus is not just a man, but that he was God in the flesh, who didn't care about his title or his position, and instead willingly took the role of a servant so that those who rebelled against their role as a servant might be served and restored. In our passage today in Hebrews, we'll see the same idea of the incarnation fleshed out a little bit more. You see, the story of Christmas doesn't start in the manger, or even when the angel comes to Mary and tells her that she's going to have a child, even though she's a virgin. The story of Christmas starts long before Jesus comes to earth as a baby, because Jesus was not created. He already existed, and he chose to come to earth that first Christmas day. In Micah chapter 5, it tells us that his coming forth is from ancient days. Really, the reality is that what sets Jesus apart is not the amazing virgin birth. What sets him apart is the fact that he existed as God prior to taking on human form that first Christmas day. And not only did he exist prior, he still exists and will continue to exist as God for all eternity. The amazing miracle of Christmas morning isn't the start of the story. Rather, what it is it's a beckoning of the main character of the story to enter into a new relationship with the purpose of changing the storyline and solving the conflict that, and really proving that he ultimately is the hero. So take a look at what Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1 through 4 says. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times in various ways. But in these days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as his name is superior to theirs. Now, if you take a look at verse 1, I sense that usually when people think about prophecy, our main thoughts about prophecy is really the prediction of the future. But prophecy in the Bible is way more than just predicting the future. When God prophesies by speaking directly or speaking through someone else, what's really going on is he's inserting hope into the story. Prophecy isn't just about predicting the future. Prophecy is about bringing hope. It's hope in a different reality than the current situation that humans are experiencing. See, the truth is that although we live in a unique time of history, our lives are not that different. Yes, we live in a different age, but we face the same struggles that have plagued mankind for thousands of years. And although it may feel like it to some, 2020 is not the worst year ever. We're not the first humans to experience pain and hardships. We're not the first to experience the loss of work and relationship. We're not even the first, and probably won't be the last, to experience a pandemic. Human history is littered with broken experiences where change is desired and needed. And prophecy speaks hope into those situations, into a broken world. The prophecy of Jesus coming at Christmas really goes back to the very beginning of human existence, when God speaks after Adam and Eve choose to place their hope in themselves. And despite their outright rebellion of him, God graciously promises and prophesies the hope of Jesus coming, really with the purpose of restoring and undoing the damage of the broken relationship and the broken world that we live in. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the very first prophecy of God inserts hope of the coming of Jesus at Christmas. And God says this to Satan. He says this. He says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. And he will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. See, this is a prophecy of hope. It's a prophecy of hope that there will be one to come to restore the brokenness, that there is actually a future coming, a rescue that we get to celebrate and wait with joyful anticipation. And all throughout the Bible and all throughout history, and even to this day, humans continually bring brokenness. And what God does is God continually brings hope. And if you trace the story forward from Genesis 3, you'll find that God sent many prophets to be his messengers. Really, his voice calling people to return to him, to follow his ways, and pointing them to the hope of the coming Messiah, an eternal king who would fulfill this promise. Now, the prophets, they didn't sugarcoat this reality that it was hard, that there were hard times for humans to live in, but instead call people to see the hope of the promise despite their situation. I think it's important for us, because I think it's easy for us to look at the hardship around us and get focused on ourselves and miss the hope that we have, that we actually know the end of the stories. The hardship that you are experiencing right now is not the end. A vaccine, a new job, a life without a mask, a return to normal is not the hope that we look forward to. Jesus is the hope that has come. And he did crush the head of Satan, and he defeated sin, and he's going to return in the future to usher in a world where there's no sickness and no death, and a place of eternal joy for all who are part of his family. That is the hope that we get to live in this season. And it's a very different hope than what the world around us has and what the culture around us is experiencing. It's why verse 2 in Hebrews goes on, and it says, the prophets are done speaking. Christmas has happened. The prophecy of hope has come. Jesus has come, and he is the voice of hope now. Why? Because look at who Jesus is. Look at verse 2 says, he made the universe. Do you realize the gravity of that little four-word statement? He made the universe is a loud declaration of his divinity, and it means that he created you, and he created me, and he created every other human. And thus he has the final say on who we are. And for what matters, that matters more than anything else in the world. The theological ramifications of Jesus as the Creator are really staggering. And I think if we truly understood the gravity of this and lived in that reality, my guess is that our lives would be much different. Verse 3 goes on and it says, look who Jesus is. It says, Jesus is the radiance of God's glory, the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. In short, Jesus is God, not just part God or a little God or a human with some God DNA. Rather, when Jesus came to earth, the first Christmas in the form of a human child, he was the exact imprint of God. There was no part of Jesus that was not God. This is directly tied back in to Jesus being the Creator. It means that he pre-existed before his coming. Even before the world was made, he pre-existed. He existed. It's why Revelation calls him the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, because Jesus is God. This is what makes Christmas far greater than the celebration of a birth of a little boy who became a great man. It's the celebration of hope that God himself came into the world. the one who actually has the power to create hope in hopeless situations, entered the brokenness of the world. And just like he spoke the world into existence, his words are now the definitive voice that sustains hope in this world. If you read the New Testament, when Jesus spoke, he didn't deny this reality. In fact, he affirmed it. In the book of John, in chapter 8, Jesus is talking to religious leaders and he tells them, before Abraham, I was. Basically, I existed before the father of this nation. It goes on in chapter 10 and it says, I and the Father are one. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. As he's praying further on in chapter 17, he said, now Father, glorify me in your own presence with the glory that I had with you before the world existed. You see, Jesus knew he was God, and he told people the same. Even as a little boy, he tells his parents when they're looking for him and they can't find him, and they find him in the temple, he says, didn't you know I was in my Father's house? These statements that Jesus made caused people to try to kill him and caused many people to stop following him. You see, there's really only two responses to Jesus being God: rejection and rebellion against his words, or acceptance and humble submission to his call. And I think we all have to consider, which category do you fall into? Verse 3 of Hebrews goes on, and it tells us that Jesus not only declared his divinity, he acted on it. Hebrews tells us that he restored hope by providing the purification of sins. You see, the story of Christmas didn't just begin in Genesis and end with the manger. It continues, and at the cross and through the empty tomb, true hope is actually available. Really, a way to receive the purification of sins is the only hope that we have as humans. Not just, I hope it works out, or wishing something will happen. When we talk about biblical hope, when the Bible speaks of hope, it's speaking of a sure thing. It's definitive. It's a guaranteed outcome for those who place their trust in the hope of God. You see, Christmas morning is then the beginning, really, of the fruition of the hope given in Genesis chapter 3. And just like the prophets foretelling of hope, angels now bring the message that hope has arrived, that Jesus has entered the world. It's why in verse 4 it goes on and it says that Jesus is superior to them. The angels are just messengers announcing the king's arrival. I don't have time today to read all the accounts, but if you read through the Christmas story in the Gospels, you'll find that when the angels appear, what they say to the humans, besides don't be afraid, is I'm here to bring you good news. And the good news is this: the king is coming. Hope has arrived. And just like the angels of the choir of angels singing glory to God in the highest to the shepherds out on that field, the crowds in Jerusalem sing the same song to Jesus some 30 years later as he's arriving on a donkey. And as the leaders call Jesus to make them stop, he tells them if they stop, the rocks will cry out and speak the truth that he is the ultimate king. You see, this time of year, we see angels all over the place. I'm sure we probably see way more angels than we see nativity scenes. And don't miss me here. I'm not opposed to decorating with some angels. It's not wrong to decorate with some angels. We actually have an angel on top of our tree that Jess and I got our first year of marriage. It's starting to fray a little bit. Not our marriage, but the angel. But the angels are not the main character of the story. Jesus is. If you look at Isaiah 6 and you look at Revelation 4, we get this little picture into the throne room of God. And the angels are there, but they're not sitting on the throne. Rather, they are surrounding it in worship, saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And they do this all day and all night for all eternity. You see, worship of God is one of the main roles that angels have. That is why they were created. It's what they were created to do, to worship God. Which, by the way, is one of the main roles of all created things. That includes you and I. We were created with the purpose of worshiping God. If you fast forward a little bit to the next chapter in Hebrews, verse 10 of chapter 2, it explains really the ramifications of the good news and the hope of what purifications of sin through Jesus in verse 3 has accomplished. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10, it goes on and says this: "For it was fitting that he for whom and by whom all things exist, and bringing many sons and daughters to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. For he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one source. That is why he's not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters, saying, 'I will tell of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I will sing your praise.'" What this is saying is that the story of Christmas isn't over with Jesus' death and resurrection. The story of Christmas actually continues on for all eternity, because Christmas is actually the hope of a family. A family that was lost in Genesis 3 has been restarted, and it's a family that's now available to all who call on his name and recognize Jesus as God. Jesus, the God of the universe, enters the world as a human, lives a perfect life, suffers and dies, suffers and dies and the punishment that you and I and all humans deserve. But he didn't stay dead. He rises victorious. And then what does he do? He enters glory so that he might lead other humans to glory as well. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, it calls him the firstborn of all creation. In Romans 8, which we'll be studying next year, this little preview next year, that's going to be our new series, will be Romans starting in January. But in Romans 8, we'll be studying that in verse 28. It says, "For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that they might be the firstborn among many brothers." The story of Christmas is that Jesus began a whole new family, and that he is the firstborn son of that new family, who went where no other human had the ability to go, because he wasn't just a human. He was God incarnate, God in the flesh, who paid the debt owed for the rejection and rebellion. And through his sacrifice, he entered glory, and thus showed humans how to obtain glory. Hope is fulfilled in Jesus. A new family is realized, and as part of this family, we get to obtain glory and reign with our brother Jesus for all eternity. What an amazing truth that we get to celebrate this season, and not just this season, but all year long. There's an old saying that you maybe have seen around Christmas that says, "Jesus is the reason for the season." And although that may sound like a cliche, the reality is true. There's no reason to celebrate this holiday season outside of Jesus. There's no hope outside of Jesus. There's no joy outside of Jesus. Humans have been able to accomplish many things. We can fly around in space, we can build giant buildings, we can make tiny microchips, we can come up with cures and vaccines for many diseases. But without Jesus, we still live without hope for the future. But the good news of Christmas is that hope is realized. Jesus is the greatest gift we could ever receive. And through his suffering, he has become the firstborn son of a multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational, unified family that he came to earth to rescue and to lead to glory. Jesus is now leading a band of brothers and sisters from every nation to his Father's house, where great love is actually realized. That is the story of Christmas. Hope is realized. The prophecy of hope has been fulfilled in Jesus, and we get to live in that hope today, regardless of our current reality, because this is not the end. Jesus is leading his family home. Will you pray with me? Our Father, we thank you that this season we get to celebrate Jesus, that we know the end, that we have the hope of a Savior. A hope is realized that you have come in the flesh, that God himself has come in the flesh to die, to rise again, and to defeat sin so that we may enter glory with him. Father, we thank you that we get to be brothers and sisters of Jesus and that we get to spend all eternity reigning alongside him. Father, may we place our hope in nothing else except for Jesus this year. Father, we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay.